Hello, welcome to the Better Outcomes Show, where we explore the possibilities of a new healthcare. Each episode, we bring you a conversation with leaders across the healthcare industry, exploring topics ranging from new treatment techniques and interventions to novel service delivery methods and business models. And now your host, Rafi Salazar from Rehab Practice Solutions, a leader in patient engagement and retention strategy. Let's explore the possibilities of a new healthcare.
Well, hello again. Welcome to another episode of the Better Outcomes Show. I'm your host, Rafi Salazar from Rehab Practice Solutions. Well, if you're on the email list, you likely got the announcement that the book, Better Outcomes, A Guide to Humanizing Healthcare, will be out and available that first week in October of 2022. It is available now for pre-order both in Kindle and paperback or hard copy on Amazon. The best way to find that link is you can either just search Better Outcomes, A Guide to Humanizing Healthcare in Amazon, or you can go to rehabilitation.com/books and then click the Learn More button. It'll take you right there. The publisher tells me that sometimes they get the books done before their date, so to speak, but we're going with the second week in October for conservative reasons, just to make sure that we've got the wiggle room if we need it. We will be doing a few giveaways of the book, probably that month of September, maybe the tail end of August. I figure what I'm going to try to do is 6 or 8 weeks before the book comes out, we'll do some giveaways, get a free copy out to some folks, and we'll keep you in the loop as far as how that's going to work and what you got to do to get entered for a free copy of the book. Anyways, let's move on to the topic of hand this week, which is the business of movement. So over the next couple episodes, I said a while back that what we wanted to do is start breaking down or kind of lumping groups of episodes together kind of by topic. I have really no idea yet how I'm going to make it work on the organization end, on the back end, so that it's easy to like tag them all and find them all on the website. But at least we're going to group series of episodes kind of, in 3-4 episodes at a time on a given topic. This topic is going to be all about moving into the businessy side of things. So The Business of Movement is a book co-authored by Dr. Jeremy Hall, and I'll tell you a little bit about him before we dive in. But it's about kind of building individual practice as a clinician, independent practice, and kind of a network of other specialties and clinicians in order to get a patient or a client the services that they need. Specifically, this book is about functional movement screenings and all that sort of thing. So we talk a little bit about that in the book, but in this episode, but it's going to kind of be the gateway into the episode that's going to follow, which is with Mike Pekatowski from the Physical Therapy Brokers organization. He basically is an advisor to organizations either looking to sell or to purchase physical therapy clinics. And in that episode, we're going to talk a lot about building value in the practice, about exit strategy, exit planning, all of the things that go and entail really when you make the decision, okay, I want to sell the business. What do I have to do to get it ready to sell? What are the things that I need to be aware of, kind of just in the way deals are structured and all that kind of stuff. So we talk about that. And then over the next couple episodes following, we'll have an episode on building mission, vision, values, and purpose into your organization and how that can impact profitability, and then what to do and how to grow and scale a clinic or a practice in a way that maintains a people-first culture. So look forward to those episodes over the next, that'll probably take us through June at this point. So anyways, this week, Business of Movement. So Dr. Jeremy Hall is a physical therapist. He's a strength and a conditioning coach. He's the co-author of this book, Business of Movement, and he's the founder of Resilient Movement, which is a digital wellness company that teaches the skills to develop physical independence across a lifetime. Jeremy's mission is to educate and empower individuals with the knowledge and tools necessary to construct a physically robust lifestyle that is sustainable and able to adapt to the constantly changing stresses and challenges of daily life. His most recent publication, in conjunction with Gray Cook, co-founder of the Functional Movement System, is titled The Business of Movement, Principles, Patterns, and Productivity. The book provides professionals in healthcare, fitness, and high performance with a blueprint for more effective and efficient practice and better outcomes through systems and strategies that put movement first. And we'll link to the book, we'll link to Jeremy's website, his LinkedIn, all of that kind of stuff in the show notes. You can head on over to betteroutcomes.show and find it there. We'll have all the links there in case you wanted to follow up, buy the book, or connect with Jeremy. So without further ado, here is Dr. Jeremy Hall talking about the business of movement. Well, hey, Jeremy, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing great, Rafi. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about the business of movement and functional movement and all that kind of stuff. But before we do that, why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself, your work, and kind of what brought you to this project here?
Yeah, so I'm a physical therapist and strength coach, and in my more recent life, also a writer. I run a private kind of clinical practice. I do a lot of kind of online, now remote consulting and kind of a hybrid of clinical work and training with patients. And then for the past going on 4 years, I've worked in the health technology space with the company Forbes Therapeutics. It's, really working, trying to kind of improve access to care for patients, helping to engage them in their recovery after surgery. So yeah, the last 2 years, I've been working on this book project called Business of Movement with Gray Cook, who's one of the founders of Functional Movement Systems. And that's actually really started to inform the direction that I'm kind of taking my work today, which is helping, I think really trying to help break down some of the barriers that are, between health and fitness professionals and, coaches and sports teams, and really helping them, understand how to educate their patients, their clients, their athletes around, kind of the broad, term movement, but, how to kind of take ownership of that. And really gain kind of greater independence in managing, their physical, well-being for the long term. So I'm literally stealing a line from you from one of your other episodes, but I think really it's about like helping, health and fitness professionals really become knowledge translators and not just interventionalists. So that's really the work that I'm really trying to focus on moving forward.
Yeah. So then talk a little bit about the book. I know you mentioned the title and kind of what it's about. Give us that kind of like a 30,000 foot overview.
Yeah. So for, for anyone who's kind of familiar with functional movement systems, and, they have kind of a battery of, tests and screens. Some are more focused for clinicians. Some are kind of very broad. The functional movement screen is a very kind of broad, test for, they kind of say, right, every human.
Yeah.
Trying to capture, movement from that perspective. And then some that are, more for, fitness and performance. But, my entry point to FMS was when I, started my career as a strength coach for the Phillies in their minor leagues before I went to PT school. And, when I came out, I had a little bit of exposure to the movement screen from my time with the baseball team, but then afterwards, going through the selective functional movement assessment certification and kind of using that in clinical practice. But I think even at that time, I didn't totally appreciate the 30,000 foot view of kind of how the two fit into clinical practice. So the book Business Movement is really trying to capture, as best as I could, working with Gray, how they as a group developed the different tests, kind of what their perspective was and their goal, and kind of laying that out for folks and seeing really the common thread that runs and connects them all together, and then helping folks kind of see, no matter where you are on that continuum of working with, whether it's on the healthcare side, right, injured folks, really trying to address health and wellness, and then if you're all on the other side and high performance and professional sports, and everyone can be speaking the same language and looking at the person in front of you through a similar lens. And by doing that, it helps to inform a little bit of the actions you take, the intervention that, the quiver of interventions that you have at your disposal, helps really be a little more targeted in how you deliver that. And then also how you either help that patient or that client kind of through that journey of, physical well-being, or hand them off to, that other person that can take them the next step along the road. So it's kind of trying to capture all of that and put it into a model that, again, no matter where you are as a professional, you can kind of look at what you're doing today, see the boxes that you're filling and checking, and then, help really to shape and form your clinical practice first. And then kind of, spin that back into your business practices.
Yeah. I think one of the chapter 3, I think, is the one on the modern model of movement. I love how they broke down the layers of movement. Like, you've got health and you've got wellness and fitness and production. And the way they kind of splay it out is really, it's a good way of looking at it, right?
Yeah, I think it's really, it's helpful to have just that framework, right? And kind of being able to look at it from the perspective of, I think I, always felt in the clinic that I was kind of straddling two worlds of, high performance, but also, the grandmothers and the folks who are coming in really just need to be able to get out of the chair safely. But not necessarily being able always in the most efficient or effective way, connect people and realize that fitness, as we think of fitness, right, is Equinox Gym, and it's whatever boot camp type class, but really fitness as a term and as a quality is something that we all need. Our lives require different degrees of it, but that we should always be trying to move folks, no matter where they are in what stage of their life, to make sure that fitness that they have matches the activity and the life that they're trying to lead and being able to again be producing at a level, getting the results and the quality that they need to have. So I think it was helpful in kind of taking some of the marketing of what we're told these different things are, and just spin it into a perspective of, okay, this actually applies to everyone really broadly. So
exactly, yeah. So talk a little bit about then, like, the physical vital signs that you mentioned, like, pain and dysfunction, and how they might present themselves maybe in the clinical or even the non-clinical scenarios, like a performance athlete or something like that.
Yeah. The really vital signs, and I think we all think of vital signs, right, are in the sense of heart rate, breathing. It's all of those qualities of your physical body that are that screen, basically, right, that we're looking at and saying, we expect this range is where you should be falling. And as long as we see that, we can assume, safely or not, but we can assume that everything is okay. You're operating within, right, the green of where you need to be. So we have that for right, your cardiovascular system, vision, respiratory system, and I think really globally to movement, outside of hey, raise your arm, ow, that hurts, oh, we have a problem. Really, that's kind of as good as a screen as we had. I know I've had sports screenings, pre-participation screens before playing sports, and it was literally arms overhead, touch toes, okay, you're fine. So I think part of it is pain should absolutely be, that is a vital sign, and shouldn't be walking around or having pain with movement, but really being able to capture in a consistent way, in a reliable way across the full spectrum of human life, what are those movements that we should see within that range, and say, hey, this indicates to us that everything is operating good enough, well enough, right? That we shouldn't be overly concerned about kind of risk down the road or something cropping up. So that's where the functional movement screen is really kind of deployed as that test that's capturing movement as that kind of physical vital sign. So the pain being the easy one, doesn't need a lot of explanation, but that kind of definition of dysfunction is looking at kind of any deviation, compensation, substitution from the norm, and the norm being, right, kind of what we would expect as being full pain-free range of motion, and with control through those the test is 7 movements, and the movements are designed to capture that developmental progression, right, that every baby goes through, of kind of how we neurologically learn how to move. So it's really just trying to, whether it's in the PT clinic or at a gym before you go jump into a training program, being the same thing as if you were going to take someone's blood pressure and you're going to check their heart rate, and you're going to say, okay, this looks fine. There's nothing that is overly concerning. There's not pain that is going to be exacerbated, or maybe a deeper problem there. So it's really acting as that kind of top line screen. It is it's in the name, right? It's just kind of saying, all right, everything seems good, or when it indicates pain or dysfunction, then that just infers, hey, we need to take a little closer look and dive into what might be the root of what we're seeing here.
Yeah. I think one of the important things about it too is like you are kind of separating pain from the movement, right? And you can say, well, you might not have pain, but you have XYZ dysfunction or compensation or whatever going on in this particular movement, and that might be predictive of an issue down the road, or predictive, or even like demonstrate that there's some kind of dysfunction happening, right?
Yeah, I think what's interesting, and what I was guilty of, and having the benefit of kind of working pretty closely with the person who developed it, was their perspective, or kind of Gray's perspective, right, is it's a screen. So what I care about is, does someone have pain? That tells me a lot of information that I need to go dig into. Or can they just not complete this motion in any way, shape, or form? Anything beyond that is really then, right, you're trying to slice and really get into the weeds, and that might actually not be valuable or important, or as predictive of these other things, as just kind of, we want to catch the folks on the bottom end of that spectrum, right, and catch the folks that are at the most risk, and everyone else, as long as they can get a little bit of guidance and get put on the right path, a lot of that can probably just resolve on its own, through healthier behaviors and lifestyle.
Well, and it kind of leads a little bit into that, like the whole, because movement is a continuum, and you've got to kind of stratified, if you would, and that kind of helps with the assessment and the treatment planning and all that. But this kind of model does help itself or lend itself to the idea of like a continuum approach, right? Where you've got maybe somebody that is getting screened and put into like an actual physical rehabilitation program, but then what happens after, like discharge planning, like what comes next? Is there a wellness or fitness program afterwards? And you do talk about that a little bit in the book, like laying out this continuum of not just like these almost episodic interventions, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think, and I think that speaks kind of to, the barriers and the silos of, we look at a lot of things as, well, this is a health problem,
Yeah.
or, oh, well, this is a fitness problem. And really, what can look like a fitness problem can be actually a health problem, and you can throw a lot of fitness at it, but that isn't necessarily going to resolve what that health problem was. And vice versa. It's kind of recognizing where in that chain is the weakest link.
Yeah.
And that weakest link is going to ultimately be the point of failure. So being able to have the tools, and obviously the FMS tools are just that. They're tools that are part of all of the other tools that we have to paint that full picture. But being able to zero in and say, the person in front of me, I might not be the best person.
Yeah.
I might not be able to fill that need that they need. So then, being able to know and say, all right, there's someone that I need to find, or that I need to have as part of my network, that can address that. And then you really are taking a holistic. That term gets thrown around a lot, but that really actually holistic care is not always what you deliver. It's being able to connect the dots so that someone can just receive it from other sources.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the quotes from the book is regardless of our respective knowledge base, if we're concerned about the best interests of patients and clients, it's in our best interest as well to know where the value of our skills stop and someone else's begins. And that's kind of like that idea of maybe you have a network of folks, or maybe you just, I guess if you're in the business of movement and health and all that, it might just be an opportunity to bring someone on board your team, right? that has those skills.
Yeah, and that's where I think you see a lot more of those kind of, they always give the example of a sports team has medical and training staff. There's 10 people who are all bringing all of their multidisciplinary interest to bear on that one person. In most environments in the world, like you can't get that unless you have the money and the resources to pay for it. So I do think it is great to see gyms that also have a PT clinic in it, or a doctor's office that also is able to kind of capture and have that continuity between it. But that's not every community it has the ability to bring everyone under one roof, but it can still be just as beneficial if in that community your connections are just strong enough that you can still offer some version of that to folks.
Yeah. It's all about, again, doing what's best for the patient or the client at the right time. And sometimes it's a network, sometimes it's people you have in-house. How much of that, I'm assuming a lot of this is obviously dictated too by the client's either financial ability to pay or their insurance. Like many insurances aren't going to cover a fitness or wellness program or something like that, right?
Yeah. I think what I've seen is that challenge, right, of kind of operating within, unfortunately or fortunately, that insurance model that puts up a lot of barriers and makes it challenging sometimes to get the patient to what that finish line might be, and that those kind of conversations and that kind of work has to happen. I think that where the real value comes into play is that much like, again, taking your blood pressure, checking your heart rate, the tests and the screens, are things that you can kind of give to patients and say, hey,
Yeah.
this is how you can be checking yourself, and periodically just making sure that everything is, humming, the engines purring along, and that there's nothing to worry about. And unfortunately, I think there is a big component that we don't always maybe have the time
Yeah.
to get to, or just, when you're seeing a clinic full of people, but really that education and that transfer of knowledge to someone to say, you're not going to have all of the solutions and all the answers, and I can't give you my PT degree, but here are the three things that focus on this, right? These are those 3 weak points, or really, this is the 1 weak link that you need to really address and take care of. And sometimes that can be that 80-20 play of that one thing is what has all those kind of ripple effects into everything else. So I think doing as a profession, but just as kind of an industry, doing a better job of helping and using tools and taking that perspective to say, like, what's the one thing that I need to impart to this person, the on their eval, that first time they're coming in and the last time they're coming in, that I can give them some actionable steps to follow, but also some actionable ways for them to kind of self-assess and self-monitor it, so that, that gets them a little further down the road, independent, and they know how to manage it. And then, right, incrementally, hopefully, you're able to just kind of get that person where they're really only showing up when something, goes astray or goes sideways, and it's a patient for life, right? But in a good way.
Yeah, no, it's great. So it's kind of like the idea of this whole idea of building an independent practice and individualized care and all that. Like, does this model kind of fit into this kind of traditional big box therapy folks? You see them like on every corner, and they're running high volume of patients. Like, this could work for somebody like that too. That's very maybe time constrained, right? Like you're saying, the one thing that I can give this patient. But it also works for those independent clinicians that maybe have a little bit more time on their hands and can spend a little bit more time with hands-on treatment. Like, how does this system kind of fit into either of those? Like, is it better suited for one or the other? Does it work kind of across the spectrum? Like, does it change the approach of maybe a big high volume clinic to like, oh, you know what, maybe we don't need as many appointments or something like that, because what we're doing is transferring our knowledge or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that that is like a big, I feel, that could go in a million different directions. Yeah. I think at its core, having worked, in the kind of big box, by the definition that I know, like you and I kind of understand, but in that environment, I always felt like I didn't have the time that I really needed on that first visit. That first interaction with the patient was getting squeezed more and more and more and more. And I think, what I've found now, being in an environment where, it is, I get to dictate how long I take. That is where spending, instead of 30 minutes, an hour on that first visit, to really do not just a thorough, parts-based kind of diving in and checking every last, body part and joint, and getting into the weeds of it, but just having that time to, do an effective kind of global assessment, and then target the problem, and then have that conversation with the patient of, this is what I found, this is what this is telling me, this is the one thing that between now and the next time I see you that I really want you to focus on. I think that it's my belief, that little bit of extra time makes up for a lot of the, fall off. Patients don't come back. Patients, don't feel like they're getting value out of their time in the clinic. All of that stuff, I think, is because when there's not kind of an easy language or an easy way to talk about, findings and put it in the words and the terms that patient can understand, then you are just playing catch up every visit
the whole
after that.
time. Yeah.
You're trying to reinforce, why it's important and what the value is. So, I think really it's having those tools, and just working through, I think, what, especially in a big, busy clinic, when efficiency is key, being able to set up just those feedback loops of, how can I be constantly gathering information and gathering data, whether that's, within my treatment or, when a patient walks through the door or out the door, what your front desk is doing, how can I create those feedback loops that can tell me in real time or really quickly that someone's moving in the right direction. Because I think once you start leaning on a little more of the kind of intuition or the art of treatment, then you end up kind of always trying to find the newest technique or the thing that's gonna, one manipulation, and that's gonna make up for 30 minutes of stretching and mobility work and everything else. Those all have a place, but I think that it is about having a system and being able to take all the tools in your toolbox and kind of input them into some kind of process that is going to tell you what's working and what's not working. And then that just has, the compounding effect on patients. And like you said, if they're getting better, if you're getting better, in theory, they're coming less, right? And they're leaving you sooner. But that's someone who, without a doubt is going to come right back the second that something else happens. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it kind of fits the idea again of like knowledge translation and clinicians, like our skill or our value is like what's in between our ears, right? Like the knowledge that we have and then applying that to situations. I tell students when I was teaching at the university, and I tell my staff all the time, like there should be some kind of assessment and knowledge translation that happens in every single appointment, right? Like, because that's how patients and clients feel and they recognize the value, right? Like you said, if you give them that one thing and they say, oh, my shoulder doesn't hurt after I do this thing or whatever, it's such a real tangible thing that they walk away with. And they're like, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to work on it for the next week. And next time I see Jeremy, boom, like we're going to move on the next thing. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the, what's the other interesting point, that was something that, I kind of, learned from Gray that he really tries to focus on is kind of that perception versus reality, right?
Yeah.
And I think we always, not always, I shouldn't say we, I was always guilty of kind of assuming, right, that what I was saying was being received the way I thought it was, and that that was moving the needle in some direction. But really, from their perspective of movement, actually kind of showing somebody like, hey, I'm going to ask you to squat down with your hands up overhead. Like, do you think that you could do that? And there's some people that would say like, no, I don't think I could, that can. And there's people that have no doubt that they can, that can't. So, and that in itself kind of, dictates how you need to then transfer that knowledge and help kind of bring that person back, align perception and reality together. So I think it's so much of trying to capture, from the patient, those signs, or the the feedback that either they offer that you can capture, that just the better you can get at that, I think is what really separates those clinicians that can just kind of look at someone do something and get right to the root of it, versus someone who's, a new grad that's having to like run through their whole list of special tests.
Yeah. Well, and having those conversations with patients is, I'm assuming, well, I know, like, right. You know where I'm coming from. Like it's a skill too. Like if you notice that maybe this patient thinks they can do something and they can't, or this client thinks they can do something, but their performance really doesn't dictate that they could in a safe way, or even in a, if it's an athlete or something, in a way that's at their top peak. Like the ability to broach that topic with that client is hugely important too, right? And the ability to be able to do it in a way that's going to be, they're going to be receptive to.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think especially when things start to end up in that, right, this is good, this is bad, right? That is a tough, that's a tough model to be working in with clients and patients, because bad means, that's some kind of reflection on them.
Yeah.
So I think that's where, yeah, again, it's really helpful, like in those conversations where, if someone does a test or does a screen and it is, all ones on the movement screen, they can't do any of them. It's really presented as just, hey, this is information. This is just going to help us. This is going to help tell us what to do. This is you today. And it shouldn't be you in 2 weeks, because we're going to work on it. So I think it's that, right? It's trying to remove the some of that either emotional or psychological kind of connection to tests and findings and what does this all mean. I think 9 times out of 10, just telling a patient, this is just information, and this just is going to help us make better decisions. The both of us make better decisions going forward. And then that's just received in a much more, I think, open way than scaring someone into, well, this is a problem or this is bad. So,
yeah. Well, and one of the chapters in the book too is all about kind of understanding the client and where they're coming from and all of that. And I'm assuming this whole piece kind of plays into that, right? Like if you're dealing with, a grandma that's having a hard time getting out of bed, what you say and how you say it is going to be different than like this big bulky athlete that's trying to, increase his broad jump, right?
Yeah. And I think it's helping people identify, these are the good things that you're doing, and that's great, and keep it up, and that's all helping. And here's the couple things, we need to work on, and that's it. Because everyone's still, I think that's the other piece is right, understanding that kind of in that continuum, production, which is, people kind of think of maybe more in terms of performance, right? So if you're producing at a high level, you're performing at a really high level, but production is really, what is the output versus the input. So if, you're a grandma, you want to be able to play with your grandkids and, go down in and out of the pool easily to do your aerobics class. And, if it takes 30 minutes a day for her to stretch and mobilize and, do all these things to be able to do that, then that's not really producing at a high level. It may be necessary, depending on what else she has going on, but that level, that top tier of production, it's not just reserved for, the athlete that's trying to be the top 1%. It's really looking at, what is important to that person and how am I going to get them closer or, past that point, with the least amount of required kind of effort, time, resources, everything that someone has to basically, kind of spend to get there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, Jeremy, we're kind of reaching the end here. I always end with this. If there are 1 or 2 main takeaways you'd want maybe a clinician or athletic trainer or somebody that's interested in this topic, 1 or 2 main takeaways for them, what would they be?
I mean, I think number 1 is just get out there and meet the other professionals that are in your community. I think, we kind of look at the clinic down the road or, the gym next door that pops up as competition. Sure, they are. But I think kind of understanding and going out there and meeting those people and having an idea of what it is that they offer that maybe you don't, and just building those relationships that are mutually beneficial and instructive and really helping to connect and create a path that patients or your clients or whoever can kind of walk along, and that you're confident that the integrity of what they're going to receive, the value is where you need it to be. I think that's number one. It's just like bringing everyone on that continuum together. And then two, yeah, I think just before, chasing again, the newest technique, or, dedicating tons and tons of time and money to, a certification course or something that you feel like is the one thing that's missing from, your practice. It's just, I have found it going through the process of actually, kind of working on this book and reflecting on myself is looking at, first just creating for yourself some kind of process, turning the scientific method around on yourself, and try to really measure, quantify as best as you can, what you're doing today, track it, get some data so that you can see maybe it's not what you're doing, it's just the one thing that somewhere along the line is getting missed, and that is what can launch you into a new a new realm of success. So I think it's just kind of taking the ego out of it and just trying to really be honest and really assess your work, test and retest and test, and just keep refining until you're on the top.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jeremy. Where can people find out about you, get the book, all of the places, all the links? Where can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the book is available on Amazon or through our publisher, which is otpbooks.com. My work that I'm, again, really kind of leaning into a little more is resilientmovement.net. That's my website. So I'm going to be, trying to put more content out there and more opportunities to just kind of help folks, just be more critical towards the work they're doing and connecting people together. And I think that's the main stuff. LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn if anyone wants to look me up there.
Of course, yeah. Social media, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I'm most active on LinkedIn, unless you want to see pictures of my baby, which is on Instagram, but that's
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jeremy. Have a good one.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Rafi.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Jeremy Hall, all about the business of movement. I think going back and listening to the conversation in preparation of this episode, I think the biggest thing that kind of just reinforces what I've always thought and always believed, but I view healthcare services, wellness services, all of that kind of stuff, I view it very much as not a closed pie or a fixed thing. Sometimes when I have conversations with clients and even other professionals in the local space, the local market where my clinic is at, I get this sense of, well, I wouldn't want to refer a patient to this provider because what if they never come back? Or there's only this idea that there's only so many patients out there or clients out there that if we refer somebody to another practitioner, or like Jeremy said, if a gym opens up down the street from you, it's very easy to view them really as competition, taking away clients out of a fixed pool of clients, right? But I think the reality is, and especially in the musculoskeletal space where where I work, chronic pain, musculoskeletal pain, physical rehabilitation, all of that kind of stuff, the reality is that there are more people experiencing pain and dysfunction than there are clinicians available to treat them. So the fact that you're going to refer, or you're thinking about referring a client to another service provider, does not mean that it's not a zero-sum game, right? Like you're not losing because that happens. If anything, you're probably gaining in goodwill, in word-of-mouth referrals, in the feeling that this client or patient has about you, that you care enough about them and their recovery that you're going to refer them to somebody else to get them the thing that they need, right? And we talk about building long-term successful practices in businesses. That's a huge part of it, is building the trust within the local community, within your client base, so that they know that you have their best interests at heart. And I tell this to clients all the time, especially when I'm working with somebody, because I do treat still in the clinic a couple days a week, especially when I'm working with a client who's got a chronic musculoskeletal pain or persistent pain condition. I usually start off by saying something along the lines of, listen, I cannot promise that I'm going to get you 100% better. I can't even promise that I'm the right guy for the job. But what I can promise you is that I'm going to do everything in my power to help you get to where you need to go, or to get to where you want to get to meet your goals. Or I'm going to do my best to get you in contact with the people and the practitioners that'll help you get there, right? And just having that conversation at the outset really establishes that sense of really trust and well-being between you and the client, right? Like a lot of times, especially again in the world where I work, the physical rehab space or the physical medicine space, a lot of folks that have been experiencing persistent pain or like a nagging injury for a long time might have been to a few clinicians before, a few different facilities or organizations or clinics, and maybe they were let down, maybe it didn't work out, whatever the case may be. There's always like this little a guard up, especially with folks experiencing chronic pain. Like they don't want to get let down again. I know we've talked about that in past episodes. I think we've done several episodes on chronic pain, and there's this idea among people experiencing chronic pain that they don't want to get their hopes up for recovery. They don't necessarily know if you understand them or you understand where they're coming from. So crossing that trust bridge is huge for them, and just taking the time to say something as simple as, listen, I might not be the right clinician for you, but we're going to try to do everything we can to either get you better or to get you in contact with the folks that can help you get better, right? So anyways, that's my thoughts on that. So it's not a zero-sum game. It's not a fixed pie. There's more opportunity out there for folks in the health, wellness, and healthcare space than there ever has been. And part of that is because of things like technology allowing us to do, it basically erases geographical boundaries, right, in a lot of ways. And the fact that us as clinicians, I know I harp on this all the time, but us as clinicians, our value is knowledge translation almost above all else, right? And we take this vast array of technical knowledge and clinical research and clinical understanding, and we're able to distill that down in a way that's easy to understand and easy for clients to apply in their own situation, in their own life. And that doesn't necessarily need to happen in a clinic, but I digress talking about technology and healthcare, right? That is it for this week. If you like the show, head on over to iTunes, leave us a rating and review. If you want to be notified when we release new episodes, you can always head on over to rehabupracticesolutions.com and click on the drop-down menu under Insights. You'll find the link to the podcast page, or you can head on over to www.betteroutcomes.show. Sign up. There's a few different places on that page you can sign up to get notified, and we will send you an email with a link to the episode whenever we release a new one. We tend to release them every other Wednesday. Sometimes there'll be bonus episodes in the interim. Working on this book for the last year and a half, I feel like a lot of those bonus episodes went the wayside because I was just trying to crank out, finish up the chapters and get the manuscript into the publisher. So that's done and in the past now. So hopefully we'll get to do a little bit more of that in the future. And if you happen to be a clinic owner or administrator, maybe even a marketing officer at a private independent healthcare clinic, and you want to look at a way to attract, acquire, engage, and retain more clients, reach on out to us at www.betteroutcomes.show or www.rehabilitation.com. You can grab a spot on my calendar there. I'm pretty sure there's links to that on the website. Or just shoot me an email at Rafi, R-A-F-I, at rehabupracticesolutions.com. And let's just have a conversation about what you've got going on and whether it makes sense to try to put a system in place for it to, again, attract, acquire, engage, and retain more clients. That's it for us this week. Until the next time, everyone be safe, be healthy. I will talk to you then.
Thanks for listening to the Better Outcomes Show, where we explore the possibilities of a new healthcare. Our hope is that you walk away from each episode informed, equipped, and empowered to push the boundaries in your own practice or business. We want to give you the tools to help you build strong, long-lasting relationships with your patients and clients, helping meet their goals, improve their health, and achieve better outcomes. Learn more at www.rehabilitation.com. We'll catch you on the next episode.